All right, good morning. Welcome everyone to another live interview here we have on NextOppSocial. As always, I'm Rachel Wright Wilson. I'm joined by Juwan Buford, and today we're very excited to introduce Ms. Sandy Harvey here to the NextOppSocial experience. Sandy is a strategically skilled human resources and operational executive strategist. She offers more than 25 years in human resources as a leader in recruiting, organizational management, facilitation, instructional design, performance management, succession planning, and marketing. And she's also a diversity expert. And she has an executive advisory coaching and negotiation skills that she's utilized as a consultant and business owner for several years. So before we get into more about Sandy, because I'm going to let her say everything in her own words for sure. If you're watching with us here, either live or on the replay, please make sure you hit that subscribe button below so that you never miss an interview, a live, or any of these incredible discussions that we have here at NextOppSocial. So jumping into it, welcome Sandy. Thank you again for joining us here today. We're very excited to talk to you. We've already been talking a little bit about your journey. So let's jump into it. We always start with, tell us more about yourself, your background, and because we here at NextOppSocial are about entrepreneurship, what caused you to fall in love with being an entrepreneur?
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to be here with Rachel, with you and Juwan. It is a great day to be here. It's not really snowy outside, but I'm really excited about the whole journey of entrepreneurship. I started when I was around 10 or 11 years old. So my father had a business for my sister and I, and it was called K-San Cosmetics. And we had to sell cosmetics. And so my journey into working and doing different things evolved from a very young age. I've been in and out of entrepreneurial ventures and MLMs, which, not my cup of tea, but there are some things out there, but just really being around in the business of working for yourself and really have enjoyed the journey. It's hard work. And I tell people all the time, you really have to be committed. If you get to eat, celebrate the fact that you get meals, like, yay. Yeah. But there are ways to be very successful, but it really depends on the individual. So it's been a journey. My background is in financial services. At one point, I thought I wanted to be an attorney. I still can debate like one, but I'm not one. So I spend a lot of time in leadership, and right now I'm helping leaders and organizations with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and around leadership development, especially as we work remotely.
I love it. I love it. So, I want to do a little bit of a deep dive into your backgrounds. You covered a lot. And I've been recently reading a lot of Malcolm Gladwell. So, he has a book, Outliers, Blink. There's several other books he has out there. I think they're all profound and interesting. But you're in the human resources industry primarily now. And I think it'd be safe to say that human resource professionals can be kind of conservative in terms of the professional preparation to go into that career. And then now I'm listening to this entrepreneurial foundation that was set by your father. And now it brings all this clarity to me. When I first met you, I was like, HR, entrepreneurship, where's this energy coming from? But now it's coming to me with great clarity. So, if you don't mind, do a little bit of a deeper dive in terms of why that introduction to entrepreneurship by your father and some of the lessons you learned, why they were so important and how they've helped inform and shape how you've built your business today.
Mm-hmm. Sure. You mentioned human resources, and the one thing that sometimes HR professionals and practitioners forget is that this is human resources. It is not compliance. It's not, you mentioned the word conservative. It's not really driven that way, but you get the most from people when you engage with people. And so it is very important. And I try to use that. I use that as a foundation in my business. I am intentional about creating collaborations that are effective and they're meaningful. You know, I'm excited about us connecting, and you can't connect with everyone. Some people want to be social networkers, and that's great. But you know, how do you have the meaningful impact in relationship with other people? How can I help you? And then how can we help each other? You know, how can we change this world one person at a time, each one reach one? So what
Yeah.
is it that we can do? And so when I look at my business and the way that I built my business, which is, you know, just over 3 years old, is based on relationships. So all of my business is based on referrals. I have people calling me, you know, and they'll tell me, someone told me to call you. And I'm like, great. But that's really what you want. You want to do a great job. You want to be, you know, work with integrity. I mean, these are all things that are fundamental, but they're foundational to building a good company and organization. And that's what I try to do. I want to make an impact in people's lives.
Is it safe to say that having been exposed to entrepreneurship, having dipped your toes in multiple business ventures and looked into direct selling, that it made it easier for you to make the transition, that you didn't have the fear or the feelings if you were like, you know, paralyzed by making this deep dive into starting up your own
Well,
business?
now I still have fear, but
Okay.
the reality is that you work, you know, you work through that. I'm very aware and conscious of, I have a perfectionist syndrome. And
Mm,
so I will work so hard at trying to make something perfect that I delay in doing it.
mm.
Because it's like, oh, is it good enough? Is this going to be good enough? Will people understand it? Will they appreciate it? So it's really thinking about, you know, confidence in yourself, but also confidence in the services and the quality of the services that you're delivering. I don't duplicate what someone else is doing. I do the best that I can do. And that to me is most important. But that's also what makes people great entrepreneurs, is that they're confident in the skill that they have. And then they use that to help others, to help businesses, organizations, associations, and they drive business that way. But if you're not confident, then some of that is a challenge. I mean, for me early on, even I worked in my dad's insurance office at the age of 15 and 16. And he said, well, you know, you work during the summer, so you get to stay during the fall, you know, school year, I get to stay in the house. He said, this is how you're earning your keep. And I'm like, is anybody else have to do this but me? You know, who else has to work during the summer and get up? But I realized that for me, being exposed to a lot of different things at an early age let me know. And I'm also the youngest. I don't see limits. I
Mm.
just feel like you can do whatever you want to do as long as you put your mind to it.
So I know there are people listening in who dealt with the same challenge, right? The perfectionist syndrome. And you use it as an excuse, sometimes
Mhm,
not to take
mhm,
action, right?
mhm.
What are some of the tools? What are some of the approaches? What are some of the things that you had to implement in your life or learn to overcome that challenge, right? Because that causes a lot of paralysis for people.
Yeah. For me, I am very conscious of setting deadlines, because if I put something on my calendar that this needs to be done by this date, I am committed to sticking to that. There are times where I haven't done that, and I will keep working on it and working on it. Oh, I got time, I'm working on it. But it really, really helps for me to put things on the calendar and to commit to that. You know, one is I'm committing it to myself. So if I break a promise with myself, then there goes a problem. But I'm committed to completing a project, or I'm committed to launching something, and then being okay with going back to tweak it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm okay with that, because it's like, okay, well, this is good. This is you're almost there, but at least launching it and receiving feedback, you know, before it's like, oh, I want it to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing.
Yeah, done, we talk about that a lot, but done is better than perfect in the long run, right? Because otherwise it's not done, it's never there, no one gets to see it.
That's right. You're
Yeah,
still working on it.
absolutely. Tell us more about, with your background of why, how you got into human resources and how you transitioned from the financial world into that, and also, how you broke out on your own.
Yes. So I started in financial services back in the late 80s. I'll be 52 on January 7th.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I'm excited. So I started as a teller and going to school part-time and working part-time, and learned a lot about retail banking operations. I've been in almost every area of the bank. I even worked in foreign exchange as an intern in high school because I'm like, oh, this is cool. So I would give exchange rates to different institutions. So I started in training and development. So my MBA is in organizational management. I have a bachelor's in business, but I've always enjoyed writing and creating things. I even had a job at the bank that I worked for, and I wrote policies and procedures for almost 2 years. Now, most people say, well, why would you do that? That's not fun. But for me, it was very interesting putting step-by-steps and pictures together. I started in training and development, creating training manuals, and then went into human resources because in many places they are very connected, and worked in human resources. And that has been pivotal in the work that I do now around, I create trainings, I facilitate trainings, I've done leadership programs. And then also from a human resources perspective, looking at it from a behavioral perspective of, do you have the right leader? Do you have the right person in place to lead your team, that team, or the organization?
Now that's be a pretty terse conversation sometimes when you are dealing with organizations and you're taking aim at the leadership and them not realizing they're the lid on the growth.
Well, you know what? To be honest, many of them know, they just haven't done anything about it. And I'm finding even in this time of pandemic, and I've asked the question, I said, were they a poor leader before the pandemic? Oh yeah, they were. So of course, there will be a super micromanager in the pandemic because they were a micromanager before the pandemic. So it's those things that organizations just accepted, dealt with, and said, we'll keep it moving. Maybe they had the technical expertise, but they don't have the interpersonal leadership skills in order to be a great leader, to build a great team.
So I want to tease a little bit aside because this is a subject I'm really fascinated about, right? Because I find there are two quote unquote types of leaders out there. You have the individuals who manage, control, dictate. They see themselves as the visionary, and they see their responsibility is to take your talent, your skill, and manifest something, right? And that's a type of leadership that's celebrated oftentimes in corporate America, right? On the other hand, there's a type of leader that believes, hey, my responsibility is to help you become the best person you can be, right? If you're in an environment where you can let your skills and your talents flow, it inevitably is going to benefit the organization. All ships rise to the tide, right? So to the extent that I can empower you, I'm going to do that, right? And, I kind of know what side of the table you're probably leaning towards. But for me, I'd love to hear, what does that conversation sound like when you walk into an organization and you see the former as part of the culture as opposed to the latter? And I know it has to impact issues of diversity in particular as well.
Yeah. It's interesting because you're essentially asking about leading by title and the whole take charge mentality and, I'll tell you what to do and you do it. That may have been successful, 15, 20 years ago. It is not successful now when we have 6 generations in the workplace. Is how do you manage all of the differences? How do you engage people? And I have found that spending less time telling people what they need to do versus showing them and equipping them, you will find more engaged. I mean, and it is statistically proven that more inclusive teams are more profitable. But I mean, you have to move away from let me tell you, but then also give people the responsibility and the accountability that goes along with them doing their job. Is if you need something by a particular time, share that. I have found during this pandemic that the biggest challenge for most leaders is poor communication skills. And that's the very fundamental. Remember, we learn these things in high school and in college. Communication skills was just the foundation. That's the first thing you learn. And I don't know if we unlearn them, but there's something about people have forgotten how to communicate.
Mm-hmm. Well, definitely this younger generation. I'm fearful. I'm fearful.
Well, they communicate. It's just in a different way.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do we, I know my great niece and nephew will respond to me by text message.
Mm-hmm.
If I say, hey, give me a call when you get back to school, let me know you made it to the dorm. If I say any of that, that's not happening. If I send money via Cash App, they'll send me a heart, thank you, love you, auntie. If I say, I'm going to write you a check, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
The check is lost.
Yeah, right.
So it's choosing how, emotional intelligence is extremely important. It's making sure we all know I'm self-aware of my preferences, but if I want to build better relationships, how am I able to do that? And what does that other person need me to do in order to engage them the most?
I like it.
Yeah.
So how have you, just to kind of work through that, especially now, so many teams are remote. So many teams, if you were a poor communicator before, I can only imagine that for the most part, especially being thrown in so quickly, so rapidly, and having to change your entire process of how you lead and how you manage, and now trying to communicate with teams where you don't even know where people are half the time, right? How have you adjusted or shifted, even with what you do, through this year of approaching, that type of work with people?
Right. Yeah. I mean, for me, it has been great because I'm doing more of what I was doing before. So even pre-pandemic, I would use Zoom, I would facilitate, I would work with, senior leadership teams. I would do this via Zoom. It's just now it's trying to transition, but also I have challenged myself to even find better tools, how to be more engaging, what can I do in order to make sure I'm providing the best service possible? So regardless of what situation a person is in, there's always an opportunity to be better. And I figure if we just kind of sit back and just say, oh, what I'm doing is good enough, that's not me, my superpower is effectiveness, but then I focus on excellence because I want people to walk away with, they feel like I've really helped them or invested in them, because they're investing in me. So I need to make sure that I provide them something in return. And it is a challenge. I have colleagues, I have others that I've talked to. It is a challenge. Technology is a challenge for even a lot of leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen a lot of that, and what I have tried to do and learned to do is not to assume people have the skill to do what we're doing even right now. And if they don't have a one-on-one, I mean, leaders across can have a one-on-one, spend 5 minutes with Zoom just to even help someone on their team navigate better. That's what being a good leader, being a good colleague and peer is.
Mm-hmm. So up until now, we've heard everything that's great and wonderful about your entrepreneurship journey. But we know inevitably
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship can be like the market. It can be up and down,
Yep.
right? What are some of the most significant challenges you encountered in your entrepreneurship journey that may have either stalled you, maybe knocked you out your square for a moment, or put you at a point where you even possibly even questioned, right, the decision you made to step out on faith and build a business?
Yes, I mean it happens at least once a week. If you're honest with yourself,
Yeah.
and entrepreneurs really, if you're not honest, then you always think everything is great. But for me, I am very aware of, I've almost fired myself a couple of times.
Mhm.
Put myself on probation. We've had performance discussions with myself about, you're not really producing, what did you do last week, those type of things. But I really focus on, I like goals, and I like to establish goals and set goals, and that's just for myself personally, but then also for my business. And some of the frustrating things that are beyond my control, I can't worry about.
Mhm.
I am intentional about working with others that where we complement each other so we can do business together. I don't think entrepreneurship is about you do it on your own and you just make it work on your own. We can be better, and everybody can be profitable if we work together. There's a lot of business out there. And so it's sometimes it's right. It's who can be your partner, and realizing that in this business, in the work that I do, especially, is that you need good partners. I do not like HR compliance. I don't do EEO stuff. I don't, legal stuff. That it's like, I want to go to sleep now. So I work and partner with others that are good at that. And that's how we build business together.
Okay.
Every day's not great, and it's recognizing that, but it's then also don't sit there and sulk and stay there, but then get up and get yourself together and go back to your calendar and say, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing?
So I'm hearing goal setting, but I know that's probably not the only tool or strategy you employ, right? To keep yourself
Mm-hmm.
on pace, to keep yourself focused in. What are some of the other, I guess, tactics or strategies or behaviors that you've kind of incorporated into your business to keep you focused when things don't necessarily go your way, right? That's a huge part of entrepreneurship, getting out of the doldrums, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. What are some of the approaches you're using to help you out with that?
Yeah, I try to stay aware and informed because I am fully aware that, economy plays a lot. My clients are across industries. Some of them, because of their specific industry, they, may not be doing as well. Others are doing great. So I'm aware, and I try to make sure that I'm aware on, what's socioeconomics. I'm aware of, environmental, what's happening around me, what's happening in this area, what's happening in the Metro Detroit area, and really look at those things. And then also I reach out to people. I'm like, hey, you know what? This is going on. Things have slowed down, or this is what I'm feeling. I have people that I can check in with, and they'll give me a pulse point to say, oh, you're not crazy. Or yes, you are crazy. Sometimes they say, yes, you are. But, just to be able, trusted advisors, mentors, just to be able to kind of say, am I on point? But then I also, when I get down in those spots, I look at for the opportunity to support other people.
Mm.
I do lead a women of color affinity group, and we talk about negotiation skills, we talk about leadership, we talk about different things of what is needed out there. So I don't always try to focus on me, which I could do that very well, but I try to look out for other people as well.
I like it. I like it. So we talked a little bit about this in the beginning, right before we began. And I'm glad you mentioned the whole goal setting process, right? Because I've looked at your profile. We've had a couple conversations, and every time I talk to you, I learn something new, a new project, a new endeavor. You are juggling a lot of plates or hats, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of entrepreneurs that kind of struggle with that. How are you making all this happen? What's the secret sauce?
So I don't really think there's a secret sauce per se. I find that I wear one hat, and that's Sandy Harvey, or Cassandra Lynn Harvey, as my mother would say. I wear one hat, and as an entrepreneur, I also am a pastor with my husband. I coach pastors, I coach executives. I lead affinity groups or different things. So I don't look at it as I have different hats. I look at it as I have many passions. And I try to focus on those passions, because even though you're tired, it's just those things, when you start doing the things you love to do, it gives you energy. Even if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I do a lot of 2 o'clock in the morning stuff. And you may enjoy that. My mentor, Dr. Lee Meadows, says, hey, that I'm one of the hardworking women in business. And I'm like, I don't feel like I am. I feel like there's so many other things that I need to be doing. But I do appreciate the hard work that I'm committed to what I'm doing. I would say that as well. Commitment is important,
Okay, so I'm gonna challenge you a little bit.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily to challenge you, it's just to get you to extrapolate a little bit more about your process, right? Mm-hmm. So you're waking up in the morning, or mornings, and you have these different tasks and different passions that you're pursuing upon. And now I know you are like focused on being excellent in everything that you do, right? How are you managing your day? What tool are you using? What strategy? What's your approach to figuring out, okay, I need to do A through Z, but how do you determine whether or not B, C versus S or M gets done before something else? What's that process look like?
Yeah. It's interesting because many years ago, I facilitated for Franklin Covey. I would do the time management. So I learned a lot of tools along the way, and it's just now where I see it coming to fruition, where I'm actually utilizing the depths of the tool and even talking about the big rocks. But there are probably 10 things that I can put on my calendar, but 2 are the most important. And I focus on, there may be something on Monday that can really wait till the next Monday. And it's looking at, where do you move that? But I try to provide myself time. One of the tools I've had to do as we've been in this pandemic is, when I'm done, I put my laptop cover down so I can disconnect, because we're all working at home, and it's like, oh, there's an email. Let me go run to the email. And we're like rabbits, just chasing stuff. And you do that all day, every day. I don't look at emails all day, every day. Sometimes I close out the email and I'll do the work. I'll make the call. I'll do, presentations or interviews or whatever. And otherwise, you can get caught up, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, you can get caught up and sucked into email, because you're responding to every email at every moment that it comes in. And that's all you do all day.
Yeah.
So I try to focus on, putting the things, and I don't fool myself, putting the things that are important on my calendar. But, I know if I need to get something done by January the 14th, then a week ahead is my deadline. And I make sure it's on my calendar that it's due by that date. And those are things that, again, I talk about commitment. I'm committed to my calendar. I can't expect other people to be committed to my calendar, but I'm committed to my calendar. And if it's on my calendar, then it's something that I know that needs to get done. And it's not a work calendar or a personal calendar. It's Sandy's calendar. It's whatever I need to do.
I love it. So there's a business owner I'm thinking of right now, who shall remain nameless. Let's just say her name's Susie.
Okay, Susie. Susie.
And Susie owns a number of educational institutions here in Detroit metropolitan area. And every time I talk to Susie, from first thing in the morning to 12 o'clock at night, she's running like a chicken with her head cut off. And because that's the way she is, that's the way her management team is, that's the way her employees operate. So they're running from urgent matter to urgent matter, emergency to emergency. And so they get things done, but like you said, the big rocks don't get done, right? And so that's why the emergencies keep popping up. So you don't handle the important becomes emergencies. And I think about professionals like yourself all the time, because admittedly, I don't have the bandwidth to deal with Susie. I just don't have the bandwidth to deal with Susie at this moment. What's your approach when you walk into an environment, or you walk into a business, or you end up engaging a business owner having those type of challenges? What does that conversation look like? What's the approach?
So for me, the number one thing that I show them is how much money they're wasting. I do that with leadership teams now about meetings. When you have a 2-hour meeting, I let them know this is what the meeting is costing you. If you leave with no actionable items, then you just wasted, $12,000 because you have this team sitting here. So if they're moving from urgency to urgency, it's really putting a cost on that, on what's dropped, the big rocks that are dropped, or the fines or penalties that sometimes have to be paid. But you're really looking at, this is what it's costing you not to put processes in place to ensure that everything is not urgent, because everything isn't urgent. It's just when we want to deal with it, essentially.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. So the one thing that really impressed me about you, and I picked this up right away in our initial discussion, right? I hear a lot of individuals in the HR industry talking about diversity and inclusion, and you have all these catchphrases. I go on and on. 10 years ago was multiculturalism, and the concepts don't change, but the verbiage changes, right? And I know a lot of people have a misconception. I mean, we heard this as high as on the federal level, right? A misconception that the work that individuals like yourself are doing in the marketplace just really aren't useful. They're not effective. There's no quantitative benefit to them. And you kind of already addressed it already. But what really impressed me as I was chatting with you is I just kept hearing the word results, outcome, right? Expectations, the cost expense of behaviors. And that is what really impressed me about the work that you do. That when I looked at your profile and conversed with you, I said, okay, if I was going to spend money on someone to repair some of the issues I have going on in my organizations, and it's not just going to be a fluff pillow talk conversation. That's how it's characterized, right? When you talk about issues of diversity, okay, just feel good opportunity to kind of appease people, and then we go on about business as usual. I didn't get that from you at all. And so, I know you have certain processes. I'm not going to ask you to divulge that stuff now, right? All your processes, but what makes your approach different than your contemporaries or your peers? Because there is a difference here. I mean, I saw that you definitely have a methodology, so to speak, in terms of the work that you do.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I've been in the D&I field, the E&I now, but D&I field for many, many years, over 15. And there's the only way you can be successful as an organization. Training is not it. So I received that a lot of time. Well, can you come in and do training? I don't think all you need is training. And I would not be doing my job if I just came in and did training. To me, that's negligent. So unless culture changes, to me, the whole efforts of diversity, equity, and inclusion are not there if your culture remains the same. So what's the expectation? What are the desired outcomes? And I appreciate working with organizations that even if they don't know we're working through this, we don't know what our outcome is. We don't know. We just know we need to do something than what we're doing now. I appreciate that because HR practitioners are not DE&I practitioners.
Mm-hmm.
I am a firm believer that diversity, equity, and inclusion should not fall up under human resources. It is not an assignment for HR. It is an assignment for your senior leadership team. And if diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are not at the most senior level, then I look at those organizations as that they're not ready to change yet. But some of the systemic processes, I mean, I had an organization say, well, we can't find diverse candidates. And I said, baloney.
Yeah.
You're not looking in the right place. You can find diverse candidates. There's so many minority organizations out there. There are veteran organizations. They're disabled, disability, those with disabilities. There's LGBTQ. There are so many associations out there that if you really wanted to find a diverse candidate, you could find one. But you can't do it posting it on Indeed and LinkedIn like you've always done.
So
Yeah.
if there was someone listening who maybe is a leader, right, and what they're doing, or they have an organization, and because I would imagine if there's someone like that listening or watching this and they're starting to think like, maybe I need Sandy, right? What would be some of those things that you could pinpoint that you recognize when someone needs you to come in, or whether they're, I think whether they're ready or not is a different discussion, but what do you notice and acknowledge of like, this is when an organization needs someone like you to step in?
Okay. So the example of recruiting, I'll tell you my number one, and this is when if you're still using fit to say someone's not qualified for a job, you need me or you need help, because fit is not in a job description. So some HR professionals or some leaders say, oh, well, they're just not a good fit. So I ask people to dig deep. Tell me what do you mean by fit? How do you relate fit to the job, the actual job description? And we go through that process. In one organization, it took me almost 18 months to do that. But we got to the point of, you can't use the word fit, because I'm like, take it back, send it back to them. That's not a reason why they can't hire the person. So looking at it from that standpoint, if they realize that there are a lot of communication gaps where people circumvent the process because they know they can go to this leader or this person and they'll listen to me and my leader won't. Those are some of the challenges that are happening even remotely, that people are bypassing the process, and it's actually taking them a lot longer. They're bypassing it because they don't feel comfortable talking to who they're reporting to. That's never been addressed. Those are the type of issues that happen on a daily basis in a lot of organizations, that it's become accepted. And it's like, oh, well, we can't deal with it now. Let's just keep it moving. And unfortunately, it's impacting, because people now can work for any company in the world, right from their living room. So the competition is on when you're looking for qualified candidates. If you don't figure out how to get your organization together, people will come in and then they will leave you. And it'll cost you a lot of money. Yes.
I love it. You keep going back to those quantitative outcomes, which immediately piques my interest, right? My ears go right up when I hear that.
It's not softy. This is a business that you're helping. And it's like, let us help you, or these are the things that you need to do in order to be more efficient and effective and profitable.
I love it. I love it. So I was introduced to you, thankfully, at the invitation of Dr. Lee Meadows, whom I have so much respect and regard for. I feel like I'm a bull in a china cabinet when I'm talking to him because he has all this wisdom and experience, and I'm just like, I want to go. I just want to get some things done, So no, hold on, pump the brakes. But he invited me to a seminar webcast that he put on. And something that really shocked me was I felt like things hadn't changed much since 20 years ago when I was, quote unquote, got my first taste of the workforce, right? I feel like nothing had really changed all that much. That I know the reasons why I walked away from a W-2, quote unquote, career lifestyle was some of the same things we're talking about now, right? Not feeling like I was appreciated, not feeling like I was a good fit. And when you're an entrepreneur, you're in a bubble. So those issues don't even show up on my plate anymore because now I'm the one that's kind of dictating I'm curating the environment around me, right? I have more say so and control over that. And I can curate my relationships too. I can determine who I'm going to deal with and who I'm not. But to be on that webcast and hear that a lot of the same things that were so disconcerting to me as an educated, hardworking, talented African American, it blew me away. Like I was like, this is the 21st century. Like we haven't gotten beyond this. How, when you think about that and the discussions that were being had during that webcast, I mean, how's that impacted your work? How's that informed you in terms of how important the work is that you're doing today, but what's going to be the impact 10, 15, 20 years from now?
Yeah. For me, it's important to, as you mentioned, is to share and to identify for organizations the systemic barriers that they have internally. For instance, I was passed over for a promotion that I didn't even know was available. Someone else got personally tapped on the shoulder, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even know this position was posted. Well, it wasn't. So those are internal systemic things that we have to share, that there's a problem with this. I can tell you for women, and this is not just women of color, but women over a 40-year career have made about $1 million less than their male counterparts on average. So that is also why a lot more women live in poverty at the end of their life, is because we've been underpaid, or we've not negotiated, or we've not asked for more, or we've not thought we deserved more, or we didn't think we could do the job because we didn't meet 80% of what was on the job description. So it's looking at those internal barriers. When we talk about equity, when I go into organization, I look at, from a compensation standpoint, are people being paid equitably within the company or within the organization? And if not, let's figure out why not. We're moving away from, I can ask you, how much did you get paid at your last job? It's not about that. How much does this job pay? That's what matters. And so when we think about some of the barriers that we put up and we place on people that work for us, that we're supposed to care about, we have to also look at, there are things that we can do internally, but we have to have a drive and a desire to do that. If you really want equity to be a part of your organization, you have to say, these two people are in the same job. They have the same amount of education and experience. Why is there a difference in pay? Those are real things that we have to deal with in companies right now, and say, I want to do better. I want to be better. There's no way that you could change everything at one time. It's impossible. But you can look at, how do we market our company? How do we reward people? Do we reward them, like you said, because they're bullies and they've been good at being bullies year after year? That's usually who I saw being rewarded. Is someone that was mean-spirited, and that's who you say, oh, we're going to promote them.
Okay. So, so I'm going to get a little bit rudimentary here, right? So now people, if you don't understand just how effective Miss Sandy Harvey is, nothing else will convince you. I mean, that was incredible. Just listen to you kind of talk about the nature of your work and the value of it. So you have your value proposition. And I run across a lot of HR professionals who have a good value proposition, but in terms of structuring their business, in terms of marketing their business, in terms of securing clients, your background obviously played a huge role in it. But what are some of the tactics and strategies that you've employed to go about marketing and prospecting? What's worked for you, and what's been working for you during the pandemic in particular?
Mhm. I think it's important for people to be genuine in this season where the pandemic has been around and many have lost their jobs. I mean, I've received numerous phone calls of, can I talk to you for a few minutes because I want to be a consultant? And the first question I ask someone is why? Well, I don't have a job. Well, that's not a good reason why you want to do your own business. And so it's having those conversations. But if your heart is not in it, if you can't be genuine, which I've run into individuals who I thought were, but they weren't. And so if you're not careful, you will find yourself and you will have the reputation of flying with the wind. And people won't see you as committed to one thing. I asked one person I talked to is, what do you want to focus on? Well, I want to do everything in HR. Nope, can't do that. What do you want to focus on? I said, well, I tell you what, let's end the conversation now, but let's schedule something 15 minutes in a couple of weeks. And you think about what areas you really want to focus on, because when it comes to marketing yourself, you can't say you're the jack of all trades.
Right.
I had to be very careful. I started out with this wide, and then I've narrowed it down to these are the areas that I'm an expert in. And these are also the areas that bring me joy. I will not do anything that I don't like.
I like it.
Yeah, and it's really hopefully people are able to figure out what they enjoy most, but then also I know if it's temporary that you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to do your own business, that's one thing. But if you're really in it and your skin is in the game, you will figure out how do I do this? How do I do it responsibly? Because integrity matters and relationships matters. And for me, since July, I've been intentional about having coffee times with people that I don't really know. That I may have been connected with, but it's like, okay, let's spend 30 minutes. I want to get to know what you're doing. Maybe not the same industry, maybe not doing the same work, but I've tried to really get to know people better than just saying we're connected on LinkedIn.
I love it. I love it. So you've shared a number of superpowers with us. You have many.
Use the word superpower.
Yes. So we're going to wrap around to that. But the question I've been thinking about as we wrap up here is, for those individuals, my goodness, man, Sandy, when you talk about preparation, when you talk about being excellent, I mean, I know the questions we sent to you, and you didn't even need us to ask them. I mean, you came so prepared. I mean, you just crushed every single one right out the park. So, I mean, it's been such a phenomenal interview. We really appreciate you taking time with us. And so I know this question is going to be a little bit redundant, but I still want to plant that last seed with individuals, right? And what's the one thing that you'd want aspiring entrepreneurs to know, regardless of industry or endeavor, right? That you believe is most important if they're going to either tiptoe into entrepreneurship or decide to burn the ships and jump in 2 feet first? What's maybe 1 or 2 pieces of advice that you really want to leave individuals with?
One is, for me, do your research. So know what area you're getting into, know why you're getting into that. I cringe when people say, you know, it's my side hustle. This is not my side hustle. This is my life. And so I'm very committed and very clear about that. I don't side hustle. I don't hustle anything. That's just not a word and terminology that has been in my vocabulary to where, you know, my grandmother would roll over in her grave if she heard I was hustling. So I'm very clear. I'm like, that's not what I do. And everything doesn't work out, but you have to keep at it. And I would say resilience is extremely important for someone that is saying, you know what, I want to venture off and do this one or two things. But be resilient at it and, you know what it is that you want to do. So when you know what you want to do, don't stop just because the door is closed. Keep going, you know, keep connecting, keep building, keep challenging yourself. You know, even for me, I still continue to get certifications as needed. I still continue to build myself in order for me to be able to learn and grow. And if you stop doing that as an entrepreneur, you miss a lot of opportunities out there. So I take the opportunity to build myself as well as my company. And how do I add and grow? But I think it's important for people to know what it is that you want to do, because when it comes down to trying to share and explain, you will be all over the board if you haven't figured it out. And it's important to know, you know, I don't necessarily say, oh, you got to have an elevator speech, because I'm not, my conversation is not the same every time. It depends on who I'm talking to. And I love the fluidity of having a conversation with someone and really talking about what it is that they need. So I'm not trying to sell myself or my services, but I am saying that you get the best. If you want the best, you can get the best. But you know, that's just life. That's on anything, right?
Yes, I love it. I love it.
We did actually have a question on YouTube
Okay.
that came up that I wanted to address. I know we're getting towards the end and I don't want to go in 18 different directions, but they're watching live. We might as well address it.
Awesome.
Gary asked, or he said and I think this was going to when you were talking about, especially with females and women, how much less we make over a lifetime, right, in our career. So he said the aggressive male gets the spoils while the passive female makes $1 million less in a lifetime. That's what I'm hearing. Is that a true assessment?
Yes. So I can provide, I'll have to send it to you, but I can provide the study. But it's on average $900,000, but it depends on the professional position. So it could be more, could be a little bit less over the lifetime of benefits and cash that is not received. So that is a real assessment of, I mean, I've had counterparts, I've had it happen to me, and I'm in HR, where my leader told me, we're going to give this person a higher increase because it was a male and he had a family. Now, I am in HR, I know it's discrimination. And I said, but I worked hard. Are you saying I didn't work hard? No, I'm not saying you didn't work just as hard, but they have a family. And so it's those type of behaviors and unconscious behaviors that happen all the time in the workplaces that people are like, well, how did that happen? So I could get 5% and somebody else could get a 12% increase.
Oh. I don't know, the former investment advisor in me is like jumping out when I hear that, right? Because I know the real consequence of money over the course of time.
Yes.
And $50,000 over the course of a lifetime makes a difference.
Yes.
You know, 100,000 makes a difference. That'll determine the zip codes you live in. That'll determine what school your kids go to. That'll determine how much wealth you can accumulate for the next generation or lack thereof. That'll determine if a life situation happens, whether or not you have the resources and the wherewithal to overcome that. We're talking about $1 million over a lifetime. And I gotta imagine that you probably have like a whole list of mind-blowing statistics that show how discriminatory practices really have that type of impact. And that's real consequences for society in terms of,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, huge consequences. I mean, that'll determine the educational level and attainment.
Yes.
That will determine the food that you eat. That will
Yes.
determine the health care that you receive.
Yes.
That will determine your ability to travel and learn new things. Oh my goodness. Huge. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'll get started talking about this. We'll be on
No,
another.
but I mean that you are absolutely right. And that's why it is so important when we talk about equity in the workplace. If we don't start speaking up, and if women don't start being advocates and allies for each other, I mean, it makes a difference. You're right. Healthcare disparity. We see systemic poverty happening, but all it takes is one generation. So one person, and then the future generations benefit. But how does that happen in a workplace that says, oh, it's no big deal, we don't care about pay disparity?
Okay. Wow. That's deep. That's I'm gonna invite.
That's a whole nother conversation.
I know.
Because I'm like, then I get fired up.
It's like that dead space. Like we want to talk about this, but yeah, I mean, like that was really profound. My goodness. Okay. So I'm going to defer to you, Rochelle. Moving on.
Our last question. Well, we also, we touched on superpower, but we always just want to end on a more little fun note, right? And you shared with us your important lessons that, that you want people to take away. But what if you could name them? And you have already named a few, but what would be your superpower or your spirit animal?
So, effectiveness and resilience. I grew up with childhood asthma. I started playing soccer at the age of 4 because of that. Essentially, my pediatrician told my mom, if she doesn't do something, she won't be around. And so I am the youngest. I have found a way to continue to do or find a way to do what it is that I want to do, even if it shouldn't happen, but it does, because I believe that, you can make those things happen. And I am a person of faith. And so I keep focused on that. I don't try to get in anybody else's lane. And I think that for me is most important, because we can compare our lives to so many other people. And so, compare our businesses, and we'll always feel like we're failures. But if you get caught in that cycle, it is very difficult to get out. So I just focus on, what? I ran track. I know the importance of staying in your lane and passing the baton. So I know what that means. And you can be disqualified if you get in somebody else's lane. So I think for me, that whole being resilient and effectiveness, I want my life to be effective, but I also want my interactions with other people to be effective as well.
Excellent. All right, Sandy, and I'm sure there will be people who want to reach out to you, who want to connect with you, want to talk with you more, or want to hire you. What is the best way for people to find you?
Sure. So you can find Exodus Consulting Group on any social media. Well, I shouldn't say any, because there's so many out there now. So on the primary social media platforms, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you follow Sandy Harvey, you can follow me, Sandy Lynn Harvey, on all those same social media platforms as well. And you can visit my website at www.exodusconsultinggroup.com or www.sandylynnharvey.com.
Excellent. Thank you, Sandy. This was amazing. We are so glad you were able to make the time.
I appreciate you guys inviting me.
Yes, thank you again. Everyone watching, please reach out to Sandy if you want to learn more. Share this with anyone you think could benefit from this with your audience, and we will talk to you